Теперь сюда. Теперь вот сюда. Так, нет, вот сюда. Теперь вот сюда. Это уже что-то путаюсь. Так, проверим. Все включено. Пожалуйста.
Спасибо. Okay, dear friends, good morning. Today we start a lecture about the most of the main systems of organism of children. It's digestive system. What organs includes in digestive system? It's you can see in these pictures, such as oral cavity, mouth cavity, esophagus, stomach, duodenum, small intestine, large intestine, pancreas, liver, and bile excreting tract include gallbladder. Among the various body systems that of digestive system occur a very early stage of embryonic development. To 7-8 day of endoderm begins in the primary intestine's organization. At 4 weeks on the front of it raises the rectus, opposite anus appears. And by the end of first month, 3 parts of primary intestines are planned: anterior, middle, and posterior. From the anterior intestine, the pharynx, esophagus, stomach, and duodenum develop with a rudimental of pancreas and liver. From the middle intestine is formed part of the 12 duodenum, ileum, and ileum. From the posterior intestine, all part of large intestine develop. On the 3rd month of fetal development is carried out bowel rotation moving from right to left behind the upper mesenteric artery and thick left to right from the same artery. In the first weeks of pregnancy, the endocrine apparatus of an gastrointestinal tract is late with subsequent production of regulatory peptides, secretin, gastrin, methylin, and ACT. Peripheral and central nervous mechanism of regulation of gastrointestinal tract are late. From 16 to 20 week of the gastrointestinal tract begins to function. Prior to implantation of embryo is in uterine wall, it powered material of the yolk sac, histotrypsy type of food, its name. Since the formation of placenta by hemotrophic transplacental nutrition and 4 or 5 months of fetal development when start functional digestive tract, together with hemotrophic is amniotropic nutrition from amniotropic liquid. The amniotic fluid contained all the nutrients and enzymes. Other sources of enzymes is the gastrointestinal tract of fetus, placenta, mother's body. Due to the high permeability of intestinal tube, part of nutrients is absorbed without prior hydrolysis, which must be taken into account when feeding a pregnant woman in order to prevent the development of allergic disease in the child in the future. After birth, the child goes to lactotrophic type of nutrition. The oral cavity of a newborn and infant is relatively small. In the newborn lips are thick, the inner surface is transferred rollers, sorry. The sacral muscles of the mouth is well developed. Cheeks in newborn and young children are rounded and convex due to the presence between the skin and when developed cheek muscles rounded fat body. It's fat lumps Bisha. Bisha, it's name of pediatrician, French pediatrician, who described in many years ago this phenomenon, which from 4 years gradually atrophied. The firm palate is flat, the soft palate is short, almost horizontal. Velum does not concern the posterior pharyngeal wall, which provides the child the opportunity of breathing during sucking. Very interesting situation, breathing during sucking. It's not in another age, it's maybe together. With the appearance of milk teeth, there is a significant increase in the size of alveolar processes of a jaw, and the weight of the hard palates rises. Tongue is in newborns short, wide, thick, and sedentary, occupy the entire oral cavity. The oral mucosa in children, especially young children, is thin and easily vulnerable, which should be taken into account when processing in oral cavity. The mucous membrane of the bottom of oral cavity forms a notice fold covered with large number of villi. On the mucous membrane of the cheeks in the gap between the upper and lower jaw, a protrusion in the form of a lora is noted. Transverse fold rollers are on a hard sky. Lora like thinking on the gums. All this formation provide sealing of oral cavity in the process of sucking. On the mucous membrane in the region of hard palates, in the middle line in newborn, located nodules bone, yellowish education, retention cyst of salivary glands. The nodules disappear by the end of the first month of life. This retention cyst of salivary glands you can see in upper picture. The oral mucosa in children in the first 3-4 months is relatively dry. This is due to insufficient development of salivary glands and saliva deficiency. Features of salivary glands in newborn: low secretory activity. Pay attention to the age of described in this slide. especially of newborn. Newborn, for you remember, it's a baby from birth to first 28 days age of 28 days. Features of salivary glands of newborn: low secretory activity, isolation a small amount of thick viscous saliva. The reaction of saliva is neutral or slightly acidic. Amylase concentration is low. The functional activity of salivary glands increases in 1.5 to 2 months. In children under the age of 3-4 months, the saliva often flowers from the mouth. This is due to the immaturity of regulation of salivation and ingestion of saliva, physiological salivation. The acidity of saliva increases with age. From the first days of life, in the saliva includes alpha amylase and other enzymes necessary for the breakdown of starch and glycogen. In newborns, during the first years of life, the content and activity of these enzymes increase significantly. So, infant has a final shape. The entrance to the larynx is located high above the lower posterior edge of the palatine setting and connected to oral cavity. Food moves to the side of protruding larynx, so the child can simultaneously breathe and swallow without interrupting sucking. Such as result, its previous slide described. Function of oral activity. It's for you remember. It's analysis of taste properties of substance, weighting with saliva of food, initial hydrolysis of carbohydrates, formation of food bolus, irritation of mechano and thermoreceptors, causes irritation of gastrointestinal glands, protective function, chewing. Saliva ensure integrity of oral cavity. Next part of digestive system is part named esophagus. Esophagus is a narrow muscular funnel-shaped tube with extension in its caudal part. Its length at the birth is 10 centimeters. In 5 years, 16 centimeters. In 10 years, 18 centimeters. In adults, in average, nearly 24-25 centimeters. The width of esophagus in newborn nearly diameter, nearly 7-8 millimeters. In 1 year old, 1 centimeters only, and just to 12 years old, 1.5 centimeters. Contact of esophagus with surrounding internal organs leads to formation of 3 contractions. In initial part, in the level of bifurcation of trachea, and in diaphragm. You can see this contraction here, here, and here. In the area of contact of esophagus with posterior wall of left ventricle of heart, during esophagoscopy, when passing the endoscope through this part of esophagus, various rhythm disturbances may occur, which must be taken into account when conducting the study investigation. In the newborn, there is a relatively weak development of anatomic narrow of the esophagus, insufficient development of muscle elastic tissue. There is a good development of some submucosal layers. The mucosa is rich in blood vessels. The walls of the esophagus are thin. Unlike other parts of the gastrointestinal tract, the esophagus has no serous membrane. Uh, uh, in another part of the gastrointestinal tract, present in all part serous membrane. Just only at esophagus we have anatomic features. The longitudinal fold of the esophagus mild. Its mucous membrane is lined with multi-layers flat epithelium. The esophagus itself is relatively short. The transition of esophagus to the stomach in all periods of childhood is located at a level of 10 or maybe 11 thoracic vertebrae. That's correct with anatomic position. The esophagus flowers into the stomach at a certain angle, which called the angle of DIS. In newborn, it's 90 degree. With such a magnitude of it, there is a lack of cardio. The function of esophagus is to move food from mouth to stomach. On these pictures, you can see congenital atresia of esophagus in premature baby. The X-ray shot and contrast probe inserted through the low nasal passage into esophagus is bent by a loop. What you can see here with atresia. Gas bubble of stomach is missing. Its situation is need emergency surgical procedure for correct this abnormality. Stomach in newborn is oblique with 5 to 6 months horizontal, and when the child begins to walk in vertical position. The stomach of a newborn has a saucer-like flat shape, then becomes rounded with introduction of thick food, take from the throat or hook. With age, there is a gradual increase in weight, mucous surface, and stomach capacity. The physiological and anatomical capacity of stomach. The physiological capacity, it's more according, it's more important for our understand, especially when we study process of nutrition of baby in early age. The physiological capacity is less than anatomical, and at birth it's just only 7 milliliters. On the first day of life after the start of internal nutrition, physiological capacity in stomach increased to 40-50 millimeters, to 10 days up to 100 milliliters. By the end of first years, it's 250-300 milliliters. For 10-12 years old, 1,300-1,500 milliliters. In newborn child, there is a weak development of bottom and cardiac part of stomach. The bottom of the stomach is formed by 10-11 months. The formation of cardiac part is completed only by 8 years old. and relatively short esophagus contributed to the fact the part of stomach in the chest cavity and part in the abdomen. The pyloric department is functionally as well developed and already at birth. All this makes possible to compare the stomach of a child with the first months with open bottles and predisposes children of the first years of life to regurgitation and vomiting. The relative surface of gastric mucus of newborn is small, which reduces the risk of denaturation of hydrolysis of immune substance. With age, the surfaces of mucus intensively increase in 3 months after birth, in 3 times increase to 5 years old, 5 times increase, and to 15 years old in 10 times increase on just the surface of mucus in stomach. The very mucous membrane of stomach in a child compared to adult is relatively thinky. It's tender, rich of blood vessels, poor of inelastic tissue. Its folding is not enough. The muscular layers of gastric wall, especially longitudinal and obligative, are poorly developed, little differentiated. The gastric juice of a newborn and infant contains the same enzymes and as that of adults: pepsin, gastrin, chymosin, lipase, but the enzyme activity is reduced. Lipolysis in breastfed children is due to lipase of gastric juice and lipase of female milk. A characteristic of features of lipase is ability to carry out hydrolysis of fat in absence of bile acid and in optimum action in a natural or close to it environment. Hydrolytic acid begin to bioactivity secreted into lumen of stomach from 2 months of age. The number sharply increase of introduction of the baby solid food. The pH value in stomach in newborn immediately after birth is 4 to 6.5. Few minutes after birth, feeding, especially start feeding, is reduced to 1.5, 2.5. By the end of the first week of life, the pH of gastric juice is 4 to 6. By the end of the first year's life, 3 to 4. Etic forming function and proteolytic activity of gastric juice in children of the first year of life depend of the type of feeding. It's higher in children who are on artificial and mixed feeding. Low acid-peptic potential of a stomach in newborn ensure safety of immunoglobulins, especially immunoglobulin A, lymphoid cells, and macrophages contained in colostrum and mature mother's milk, which in turn protected child after birth from massive bacterial invasion during the periods when its own active immunity is just beginning to form. It's for you. Remember, the function of stomach includes depositing food, chemical treatment of food with gastric juice, mixing food with digestive juice and moving to duodenum, absorption of substance, excretion into stomach cavity of metabolized substance entering the body from outside, Formation of a substance involved in regulation of gastric and other digestive glands, bactericidal and bacteriostatic effects of digestive gastric juice, very important part, initial hydrolysis of proteins and fats, and mechanical breathing of food. Intestine. The newborn compared with adult, the length of intestine relatively to length of the body is relatively greater. In newborn, 8.3 to 1. In adult, just only 5.4 to 1. It is because the anatomical length and intestine increase more slowly than growth of child. It's weakly fixed by a thin and long mesentery to black hole of abdominal cavity. During the first years of life, the length of mesentery continued to increase, which increase the mobility of small intestines, causes relatively frequent intestine inversions and interceptions at this age. By the age of 7 years old, the mobility of small intestine decrease due to the large liver and development of pelvis intestine looping. Is young children are more compact, but occupy an unstable position. Innervation of small intestines is carried out due to the sympathetic and parasympathetic part of autonomic nervous system. In this small intestine, young children contain a lot of gases, the amount of which gradually decreases in volume and disappear by 7 years. In small intestine, gases present just to 7 years, no more. In adult, in the norm of gases in the small intestine is not. Features of innervation: a structure of muscular system of small intestine in abundance of gases, alone reducing activity of small intestine lactase contributed to emergency infant colic. Infant colic is one of the most problems in children in early age, really. Okay, we have a short interval, no, 5, maybe maximum 10 minutes. Rest, one cup of coffee. Okay, let's continue our lectures. The small intestine in the main stage of complex process of splitting and absorption occur. Membrane digesting dominates in infant during the periods of milk nutrition. The secretory apparatus of a small intestine through birth as a whole is formed. Even in newborn in intestine juice, you can determine a same enzymes such as in adult antagonise, alkaline phosphatase, lipase, amylase, maltase, nuclease. But the activity is low and increased with age. The features of protein assimilation in young children include in high development of pinocytosis by epithelial cells of intestinal mucus. As a result of which milk proteins in children in the first weeks of life can pass into the blood in the lethal change form. These can lead to appearance of antibody to cow milk proteins. In children older than 1 years, proteins undergo hydrolysis with formation of amino acids. Large intestines. The growth colon in uterine periods began the growth of small intestines, and the newborn's ratio between the rate of small intestines and large intestines is 5.5 to 1. Up to 3 years, both parts of intestines grow equally intensively, but in the sequence periods, the colon grows more than rapidly, and the ratio between two parts of intestines becomes to 4.6 to 1. In newborn, the second is high, and ascending colon is shorter than descending. The sigmoid colon is long and forms excesses. The large intestine has a rate equal to growth of child. The appendix of children compared with adult is shorter, 4 to 5 centimeters in newborn and 9 to 12 centimeters in adult. Because along of mesentery and the good mobility, it can be found in any part of abdomen, but most often is appendix and retrocecal. On the picture you can see different variants of position of appendix. The ascending part of colon in neonates is short and has a height of 2 to 9 centimeters. Late begin to increase after years. The transfer part of colon in newborn is located in the epigastric region, has a horseshoe shape, by 2 years occupied a horizontal position. The curves of intestines is poorly expressed. The mesentery and transfer part of colon is thin and long, so it moves easily when filling the stomach and small intestine. The descending part of colon is weakly mobile. Sigmoid colon, compared with other part of an intestine in a newborn, is very long and mobile. And the process of this growth continues from almost all life with relatively decrease in its rate with age, due to undevelopment of pelvis. Sigmoid colon in children under 5 years is located in abdomen. Then it fell to pelvis due to sharp shortening of mesentery and the accumulation of fat around and by the end of 7 years old. the mobility of sigmoid colons is lost. Just after 7 years old, sigmoid colon lost its mobility. The rectum of children in the first months of life is relatively long, and when filled can be thick as small petals. Its ample is little differentiated. Fatty tissue is not developed, as a result of which the ample is fully fixed. The final position of rectum takes to 2 years old only. It has well-developed submucal layers, but the intestinal mucus is poorly fixed, as a result of which, with increase in intra and abdominal pressure, abdominal tension, with strong cough, straining, its lost prolapse can be observed. Anus in children is more dorsally than in adult. You can see mechanism prolapse of mucus. Functional features of intestine. The motor functionals of intestine motility consist on pendulum-like movement that occur in small intestines, due to which the mixing of its content and peristaltic movements promote the humus toward the colon. From the large intestine, antiperistaltic movements also characteristic thickening and forming feces. Mobility of young children is more active, which contributes to frequent bowel emptying. In the infant, during the duration of passage of food gruel in the intestines is from 4 to 18 hours, and in older children about a day. High motor activity of intestine is combination with insufficient fixation of its loops determine a tendency to invagination. You can see this variance of invagination of intestine. The intestine of fetus and newborn is sterile during the first 10, maximum 20 years after birth. It's aseptic phase. Then begins colonization of the intestine by a microorganism. The second phase, 2-4 days. The third phase, stabilization of microflora, lasts from 6 months to 2 years old. The formation of microbial biocenosis in intestines begin on the first days of life. By the 7th to 9th day in healthy full-term children's bacterial flora is usually represented mainly bifidobacterium and lactobacillus acidophilus. With natural feeding among the intestine microflora prevails bifidobacterium. With artificial, almost an equals quantity, there lactobacillus acidophilus, enterococci, and normal Escherichia coli. The transition of nutrition characteristic of adult causes a change in the composition of intestinal microflora. Pancreas. Pancreas in newborn is small and located higher than in adult. due to the weak fixation to the posterior wall of abdominal cavity in newborn, it's more mobile. The most intensively grows in the first 3 years and in the puberty periods. By birth and the first months of life, the pancreas is not sufficiently differentiated, abundantly vascularized and poor in connective tissue. The endocrine part of pancreas at birth is more development than exocrine. Pancreatic juice contained enzyme provide hydrolysis of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and bicarbonates, great alkaline reaction and medium necessary for activation of enzyme. In newborn, there is a release on a small amount pancreas juice after stimulation. The activity of MLS and bicarbonates capacity are low. In the transition of normal diet, in which more than half of calories needed are covered by carbohydrates. The activity of MLS increase rapidly and reach maximum value by 6-9 years old. The activity of pancreas lipase in newborn is low, which determines large roles of hydrolysis of fat lipase and salivary glands, stomach, and breast milk. Proteolytic activity of pancreas secretion in children of the first months of life is quite high. A significant impact of activity of pancreas has the type of feeding. With artificial feeding, enzyme activity in duodenal juice is 4-5 times higher than in nature. Liver. The liver at the time of birth is one of the largest organ of baby's organism. Its lower age prostitute significant from hypochondrial, and the right lobe can even touch the chest in the hidden. In newborn, the weight of liver is more than 4% of body weight, but just in adult only 2%. In postnatal period, liver continues to grow, but slower than body weight. Due to differential rate increase in weight of liver and body in children from 1 year to 5 years of life, the age of the liver becomes to under the right hypochondrium and early left 1 to 3 centimeters below the rib arch along the mid-clavicular line. With 7 years old, the lower edge of liver from under rib arch does not come out and in a calm position is not perpetuated. In the middle light does not go beyond the upper third of distance from the narrow to the xiphoid process. The liver is full-blooded, resulting in rapidly increased infection, intoxication, and circulatory disorder. Circularity disorder. The fibrous capsules of the liver is seen. About 5% of liver volume is newborn is represented in hemopoietic cells. You must remember from histology about it. Said previous semester. by the age of 8 years old. The morphological and histological structure of liver becomes the same as in adult. Liver function, you remember, for liver function. The formation of bile occurs already the intrauterine period, but bile formation as an early age is slowed. With age, the ability of gallbladder to concentrate bile increases. The concentration of bile acid in hepatic bile in children of the first years of life is high, especially in the first days after birth, which can be a causes of frequent development of subhepatic cholestasis, bile concentration syndrome in newborn. For newborn immaturity of the stage of hepatic intestinal circulation of bile acid is characteristic. Insufficiency of their captures by hepatocytes and excretion through the tubular membrane, slowing of bile current, discally due reduced synthesis of secondary bile acid, and low level of their absorption in intestine. Children produce more atypical, less hydrophobic and less toxic fatty acids than adults. The accumulation of fatty acids intrahepatic bile ducts causes increased pre-maturability of intercellular compounds and increased content of bile components in the blood. The bulk of the child of first months of life contains less cholesterol and salts, which determine in rarity of stone formation. The newborn fatty acids are connected mainly with taurine, in adult with glycine. Taurine conjugates are more soluble in water and less toxic. A relatively high content of bile taurocolic acid has antibacterial action. Determine of rarity of bacterial inflammation of biliary tract in children in the first years of life. Enzyme system of liver, which provides adequate metabolism of various substances, are not mature enough for birth. Artificial feeding stimulates their early development, but leads to their disproportion. After birth, the child decreases the synthesis of albumins, which lead to a decrease in albumin globulin ratio in blood. In infant in the first days of life, sufficient activity of glucuronical transferase is noted with the participation of which varies conjugation of bilirubin with glucuronic acid and formation of water-soluble direct bilirubin. This liver performs a barrier function, neutralizes endogenous and exogenous harmful substances, includes toxins that come from intestines. They take part of metabolism of drugs. In young children, the neutralization function of liver is not sufficiently developed. The gallbladder newborn is usually hidden by the liver. Its shape may be different. Its size increases with age, and by to 10-12 years old, the late increase by about in 2 times. The rate of bladder bile excretion in newborn is 6 times less than adult. Microbial biocinosis мы уже говорили. It's many some slides before we discussed a bit about it. How maybe what we can found change signs and symptoms of disorder of gastrointestinal tract in children. We'll start from oral cavity. Can be present in diseases of oral cavity and indicated other diseases. The purged smell in widespread carriers, ulcerative stomatitis, foreign body nose, much coated tongue, purulence, tonsillitis, adenoiditis, sinusitis, intestinal dysbiosis. The sweet smell appears at the beginning of diphtheria, then it becomes stinging. The smell of fresh fruit accompanies acetonemia, which development in diabetes, acetonemenic vomiting, acetone poisonings, and other organic solvents. The smell of fresh liver is observed to severe hepatitis, acute yellow liver atrophy. Special smells comes to poisonous by alcohol, gasolines, and acids. Change in oral mucus. Children of breastfeeding are common lesion of mucous membrane of oral cavity is like fungi Candida albicans called thus candidiasis. You can see it's one of the most found in during especially breastfeeding children. Also, catarrhal stomatitis is characteristic of appearance of bright redness which delicate from low bubbles and edge of tongue on a mucous membrane of cheeks gums. After 1-2 days, the bubbles burst leaf erosion. You can see this situation on low picture on this slide. Limited spot redness of the soft palate as ananthema named ananthema. It's observed in measles, scarlet fever, angina, acute respiratory diseases. In the prodromal periods of measles, one of the inner surface of cheeks, you can see plaque in form of semolina with mumps infections, redness of mouth of excretory duct of parotidic salivary glands is noted. In dermatomyositis, mucous membrane of the mouth take on purple hue. Prolonged mechanic irritation of portion nugus sulcus decubitalis develop erosion of ulcer. No, you can see when open of phenome of tongue, you can see the ulcer as such as result of mucus damage during coughing. On the low picture on this slide. What about tongue? Tongue pathological increase in mass of the tongue, microglycia name its phenomenon, is observed on Down's disease, hyperthyroidism, muscles from glycogen disease, lymphangioma, hemangioma, cyst of Tengu, hyperthyroidism, acromegaly, edema, or in allergic reaction, just an anomaly of development. Fragment and long protuberant tongue seen in children with Down syndrome and when mental retardation. The tremor of tongue is noted as hyperthyroidism, chorea, traumatic damage to nervous system. The twitching of muscles, fiber, in tongue when amyotrophy, Werning-Hoffmann disease, progressive to bulbar palsy. The surface of tongue can be cut deep tracks and furrows. Down diseases as the features of development of healthy children. Geographic tongue you can see on down pictures. It's typical for patients with food allergy. Geographic, such as maps, or maps pictures on the surface of tongue. Different, you can see different change of color of tongue. It's maybe so many variants includes, for example, scarlet fever, crimson tongue, bright red, shiny with hyperplastic and swollen papilla, reminiscent of appearance and raspberries. Pellagra, tongue root red with teeth print of and sealed edges. Anemia, less quite bright red. Hypervitaminosis B2, bright red. Fuchsia with atrophied papilla. Black tongue is observed when taken from iron, bismuth, blue berries, white and yellow tin of plague is a road body of tongue with combination with bad breath increase the defeat of stomach and intestine. Yellow tin indicated deposit of valve apparatus of gastrointestinal tract, diseases of biliary tract. White grade plague of tongue appears in diseases with stomach and duodenum. The hierarchy causes of hyperplasia and elongation of elimination papilla of tongue. It's fungal lesion of tongue such as result of long-term antibiotics. Salivation, we remember the first slides of our lecture, also present increased salivation such as physiological in children from 3 to 6 months of life. Pathological hypersalivation accompanies stomatitis, burns of oral mucus, helminthic invasion, scoriasis, chronic diseases of pancreas, reduced saliva production occur the fevers, poisonous with atropine, especially with atropine substance. Gastric dyspepsia syndrome include pain, vomiting, regurgitation, nausea, heartburn, belching, change of appetite. What is you can see this. You can see the term of vomiting. Vomiting is complex nerve reflex act which coordinated by a medic center located in medulla oblongata. In this case, there is a reduction of gatekeeper and relaxation of bottom of stomach, expansion of shorten of esophagus, and strong reduction of diaphragm and abdominal muscles. The voice gap closes and soft palate rises. It's vomiting. It's regurgitation also present in children's. Regurgitation is patient casting a small amount of gastric contents into oral cavity. The rise amount of tension in abdominal press are carried out due to passive casting gastric content into pharynx and oral cavity. The health of child is not distributed. There is no vegetative manifestation. The child manages the milk immediately or after the second period after feeding. Sometimes in children of the first year's life, there is a chronic form of regurgitation rumination. Erupted into mouth food is chewing and reswallow. Okay, today we can finish. Thank you for attention. All your question we leave to practice practice classes according to this topic.